the Governance, Audit, and Compliance Committee meeting. Because I'm the chair and I get to do whatever I want, I would think the first action item is for all of us to say, "Go Jags." So 1, 2, 3, go Jags. Okay, we'll end the meeting accordingly. We do the same thing. We've got to send lots of positive
Please
energy
go.
our way. Lots, yeah, begging. We do have an action item. We need to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Oh, well, motion will carry since it's this our group. We need to approve the minutes from the October 13th meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Motion will carry. We have a safety briefing from Julie.
Good morning. Before we get started, I want to introduce myself. I'm Julie Moore, Manager of Internal Audit. My responsibilities include performing consulting engagements and performing projects that are outside of our annual audit plan. I've been with JEA for 8 years, all of which has been in audit services. As you know, safety is a core value of JEA. We encourage all attendees to put your phone on silent and to review the relevant safety briefing instructions on the screen and in the materials packet for today's meeting. For a values moment, I wanted to share a short story with you about integrity. It's a variation of one found on Drake University Ray's Center's website. It's a story of the seed. A successful businessman was growing old and knew it was time to choose a successor to take over his business. He called all executives in the company together. He said, "It's time for me to step down and choose the next CEO, and I've decided to choose one of you." They were all shocked, but the CEO continued, "I am going to give each one of you a seed today, a very special seed. I want you to plant the seed, to water it, and to come back here 1 year from today with what you have grown from the seed that I have given you. I will judge the plants that you bring, and the one that I choose will be the next CEO." One executive, Jim, like all the others, received a seed. He went home and excitedly told his wife the story. She helped him get a pot, soil, compost, and he planted the seed. Every day he would water it, he would watch it, see if it had grown. Weeks later, some of the other executives began talking about their seeds and how they were beginning to grow. Jim's seed had not sprouted. 5 weeks went by, still no sprout. By now, others were talking about their plants, but Jim had nothing. Jim did not say anything to his colleagues, but continued watering and fertilizing the soil. A year went by, and the CEO asked the young executives to bring their plants to work for inspection. When Jim told his wife that he was not going to take his empty pot, she asked him to be honest about what happened. Jim, sick to his stomach, it was going to be the most embarrassing moment of his life, but he knew his wife was right. He took his empty pot to the boardroom. Jim was amazed at the variety of plants grown by others. They were beautiful in all shapes and sizes. Jim put his empty pot on the floor, and many of his colleagues laughed, and a few of them felt sorry for him. When the CEO arrived, he surveyed the room and greeted the executives. He said, "My, what great plants, trees, and flowers you have all grown. Today, one of you will be appointed the next CEO." Jim just tried to hide in the back of the room, but the CEO spotted Jim with his empty pot and asked him to come to the front of the room. Jim was terrified. When he got to the front, he was asked what happened to his seed. Jim told the story. Everyone was asked to sit down except for Jim. Looking at Jim, the CEO announced, "Behold, your next chief executive officer, Jim." He couldn't believe it. He couldn't even grow a seed. How was he going to be a new CEO? The CEO then said, "1 year ago today, I gave everyone in this room a seed. I told you to take that seed, plant it, water it, and bring it back to me today. What you did not know was that I gave you all boiled seeds. They were dead. It was not possible for them to grow."
No.
"All of you except Jim have brought me trees, plants, and flowers. When you realized that the seed would not grow, you substituted another seed for the one I gave you. Jim was the only one with the courage and honesty to bring me a pot with my seed in it. Therefore, he is the one who will be the new chief executive officer." Scriptures say, "Whatsoever you sow, you shall reap. If you plant honesty, you'll reap trust. If you plant humility, you'll reap greatness. If you plant perseverance, you'll reap contentment. If you plant consideration, you'll reap perspective. If you plant hard work, you'll reap success. So be careful what you plant now. It will determine what you reap later." Personal integrity in the workplace can have a significant impact on the organization and its employees. A company's ethical culture is vital to a productive and good work environment. Employees should follow company policies, respect all workers, speak up about any misconduct, and be accountable for their mistakes. It has a big impact on those who look up to you and those who have put their trust in you. That is the story of the seat.
Great story.
Wow, that's a fabulous story. Thank you, Julie. You've given us all something to reflect upon as to would you go out and get a different seat or would you have brought the other seat
And
along?
everyone wants to know what happened to the other.
What
folks.
happened?
We all know.
And Willette, you may encourage Julie to go around with you as you're doing ethics training. Thank you. That was wonderful.
Should we incorporate that into Jay's evaluation?
I can't grow even a good seed.
We certainly could. I love it. I'm going to ask Landon and Melissa if we have any comments from the public. Nothing from Melissa. Landon, anything?
Not yet, but we do have a few from the public here, so I'm going to give a brief overview of the controls. Located on the right side of your screen, you'll notice an icon that looks like a person labeled participants. Now, this option will allow you to see a long list of individuals in today's meeting. Now, at the top of this list, your name will be visible, and to the right, you'll notice an icon that looks like a hand. Now, if you click it, it's going to turn blue, letting me know you'd like to be recognized for comment. Now, in addition, we turned the chat capability on. This option is located next to the participant icon and looks like a caption bubble. If you click it, it'll bring up the chat window and allow you to send any of your comments. With that, I'm going to give them a few moments to either raise their hand or type a comment. Okay, and no raised hands and no additional comments. I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Well, and Landon, I'm wondering, since this was a noticed meeting and we're 2 or 3 minutes in advance, we might just circle back at a later date to see if there's anything that anybody wants to say, because we did do public comments before we were published to do so. And we will move into our 22 audit results. John, it feels like we just did 21
No.
audit results.
I know you guys are probably sick of being audited. If it's not us, there's a lot of other regulators and auditors that you're dealing with. But thank you, Marty. I appreciate it. Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee, as well as other board members and members of management that are here. For the record, I'm John DeSanto. I am the partner in charge of your audit, and I'm happy to say I'm here to present the 2022 audit results. I'll start by saying where we are on the audit. We are substantially complete. The only thing that we're waiting on is for the City of Jacksonville pension plan. We need to get an audited report of JEA's balances from the plan's auditors. Similar to last year, unfortunately, that report is delayed. They've promised it to us next week. Assuming that happens, we will be able to meet our targeted January 24th planned issue date. So,
And can I just add
absolutely.
a little bit? I've talked to staff about that situation, and we're proactively reaching out to our banking partners because they're the ones that are expecting us to deliver an audit in a timely manner. And I think we're in pretty good shape relative to waiving that financial covenant expectation. They're nodding yes. So we'll be fine. I've also expressed my displeasure with John that this is the second year that we're waiting for the city, and staff is over there nodding. So I don't know, Jay, what we can do. We've been expressing our concerns, but it's kind of out of our control.
We will keep on expressing your concerns.
Okay, great. Thank you. But there's no ramifications with our financial partners, and that's our hedging partners and our bank partners.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as far as the executive summary, well, once again, I'm happy to say another clean audit, a great audit. As you see on the executive summary on your screen, the key items during the audit, there was a new accounting standard on leases that was required to be adopted during this year. Based on JEA's evaluation of lease agreements, the estimated lease liability as well as leased assets was only about $8 million. Therefore, management did not record the lease asset and liabilities. We're fine with that, not material at all. I will point out, however, that the new building, that will be material. So next year you will see the lease liability as well as the leased asset for the new building going on your books. Once again, we continue to use JEA's internal auditors, and I'd like to thank Lee and his team for the continued great assistance that they provide for us. We receive about 200 hours of assistance, and that saves about $25,000 on your audit fee. No issues with the quality of the work, the timeliness of the work, or anything else that we receive from internal audit. So again, another good year using internal audit. As far as the areas of emphasis in the middle of the executive summary, these are the areas of emphasis that I communicated to you during our presentation of the audit plan back in July of this year. I'm happy to say we completed those procedures in these key areas as planned. We did not have to change our scope or plan testing in these areas, and there are no matters to report. There were no audit differences or audit adjustments in any of these areas, and there were no other issues or findings related to any of these areas. And to the right, the looking forward, there are two accounting standards that are effective for the next fiscal year, one on conduit debt obligations and the other on public-private partnerships. As of right now, management does not expect there to be a significant impact of either of these standards on your financial statements or disclosures. But again, they're effective next year, so we'll look into those a little bit more going forward.
Hey, John, what is a conduit debt obligation?
Yeah, that would be a situation where maybe JEA is liable to pay debt in the name of somebody else, similar to like the MEAG debt offerings
Okay.
or something like that. But it would be where JEA is the conduit, where like others, the debt has JEA's name on it, but others are responsible for making the payments on it. Moving along to our required communications. The first one, our responsibilities, or the auditor's responsibilities under generally accepted auditing standards. And there are two things I like to point out here. First, with respect to internal controls, our responsibilities are to evaluate, review, and test your controls to the extent necessary to plan and perform our audit. As you know, we do not issue an opinion on those internal controls. And we do expect to issue a clean or an unqualified audit opinion, hopefully on January 24th, assuming the pension plan auditors deliver as they've promised. But it will be a clean audit opinion, as it has been for the past years as well. There were no key audit matters or key matters that arose during the conduct of the audit. Like I previously mentioned, but we did not change our audit strategy from our planned approach that we communicated to you back in July. We also did not identify any conditions that would impact JEA's ability to continue as a going concern or continue as a business organization. As far as our views about the entity's significant accounting practices, again, the only change this year, which was really a non-issue, was the fact that that new accounting standard on leases was required to be adopted. And as I've previously mentioned, JEA management evaluated and concluded that the leases that would apply in that scenario were not material, so they were not recorded. As far as related party relationships and transactions, there were no new significant related party transactions that were identified during the audit, and all of your related party transactions that are significant are disclosed in the footnotes to the audited financial statements. There were no changes to the terms of the audit or our audit contract with you. There were no significant unusual transactions during the year. And there were no difficulties that we encountered in performing the audit. Again, we continue to receive excellent cooperation from management, from Ted and Russell and their teams. There were no audit adjustments, as I mentioned, either that were recorded in the financial statements or that were left unrecorded because we concluded they were immaterial, so there were no audit adjustments. We did not identify any material weaknesses or significant deficiencies in internal controls, nor did we have any management letter comments as well. And our responsibilities with respect to other information included in your financial statements, you do include some supplemental information. You have combining schedules of the different systems, as well as there's required supplementary information that's required by the GASB, primarily related to your pension and OPEB plans. We did review that information for consistency with the audited financial statements and found no discrepancies.
Madam Chairman, there was that incident about my relationship with Vulcan. Was that ever resolved?
And we've been working with the general counsel to propose new language to address that. We didn't find any issues. And then we've also asked for an interpretation of that provision of the statute, or that provision of the charter. So that's been.
Is there any
So far,
disclosure that we need to do that we have not done?
no, there isn't.
That matter is working itself through, and we'll address it when we look at charter, just making some changes to some verbiage, but that's not an issue. That's carried forward.
And it's really just clarification of language so that folks don't get sideways with that language. Chair Baker, we're calling it Chair Baker. But the interpretation of the Office of General Counsel is that you weren't in violation or wasn't any issues at all from a material financial interest perspective. So there's really not a non-issue, but we're going to clean up the language so that someone doesn't have that same would bring it misinterpretation moving forward. That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I've just received the draft of the audit, and my plan is to read every page to look for some unintended consequences in language and verbiage. So we should be fine going
That
forward.
should be fun.
That's what bankers do.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Baker. With respect to fraud and noncompliance with laws and regulations, we did not identify any. With respect to fraud, just so you know, we are required to make inquiries, not just of management level individuals and board members and this committee, but we also look at journal entries, specifically those around the end of the year and after the year, because obviously if there's a fraud, it's usually covered up with a journal entry. And we're looking for unusual things, unusual patterns. Journal entries may be made by people who typically don't make them, like your CFO or your CEO or things like that. We also look at estimates from prior years for any instance of bias or anything like that. And so again, we're performing a lot of procedures to determine and try and identify whether or not there was a fraud that occurred in your organization. Again, that would be material to your financial statements, and I'm happy to report we did not identify any. One of the last things I need to do is to update our inquiries related to fraud or illegal acts or other improprieties. I know I made the inquiries of the management personnel that are at this meeting very recent, but I'll just ask if anybody on the committee is aware of any fraud, illegal act or anything.
Well, and as we did last year, I prefer that you
We'll
reach
do
out
that
to people
privately.
individually
Yeah.
to do that.
And we'll go ahead and do that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Before we issue our opinion.
Thank you. And Melissa, you can help set those calls up, because that, we do need to do that across the
Yes.
entire board group.
Yeah, it should be across the board group.
Thank you.
As I mentioned, with respect to new accounting pronouncements, the one on leases was the only one that was effective for this fiscal year. And we've already talked about the impact or the lack of impact that standard had on JEAs.
So that, I mean, obviously we've already signed the lease. It wouldn't be shown as a contingent liability or anything?
It's based on when the lease is effective, and
Okay.
the effective date was.
'Cause obviously
fiscal
we're committed.
23. Correct. No, that's a great question. Great question, but the standard's clear that when the lease is effective, and that's a
Okay.
fiscal 23 transaction.
Okay.
As far as any significant issues discussed with management in connection with our recurring appointment as your auditors, there were none. We did not have any difficulties in dealing with management and performing the audit. Again, as I mentioned, we do receive great cooperation from management to allow us to be at this point. And we're not aware of any consultations that management may have had on other accountants as it relates to financial accounting matters. There are no other written communications that we had with management. The primary communication we had with management, other than our standard engagement letter for the audit, there's a representation letter that we obtain at the end of the audit where management essentially asserts certain matters related to the financial statements and that they responded to all of our inquiries, provide us with all the information, etc. That letter we receive at the time that we issue the financial statements the same day. So we're still about a week or so away from receiving that letter. If anybody on the committee or the board would like to either see a copy or whatever, we can certainly provide that in advance so you can see what it looks like, or we can provide the signed copy after management signs that letter. And there are no other matters arising from the audit that I need to report to you.
I kept waiting for your call and I was happy that you never did. We did speak earlier this week and John reinforced everything that he said. Again, appreciative of our internal audit team and complimentary of how our finance and accounting team work with him. So I was very pleased.
Yeah. I'm not exactly sure. Somehow this presentation got lumped in here, but we were engaged to do a separate financial statement audit of the St. John's pension plan this year. I'll be making this presentation to their oversight group, not to this particular group. I know some members are the same, but there are some different members. So that will happen at a much later date. So that's actually not part of my presentation here for you all today. So I will ask if anybody has any questions related to either the audit or the results of the audit.
Any questions? I will fine tooth comb, go through this, read every word, report back.
Yes, and of course, reach out if you have any questions as you go through that process.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Chair Linehan, before we move on, I'd just like to thank John, but also to publicly thank Russell Cappy, our controller, and his staff that shouldered a lot of getting the financials put together, and they were short-staffed this year.
Yeah.
And they rose to the occasion. They didn't let that being short-staffed anyway affect or delay the report. So I really appreciate the hard work. I know there was a little midnight oil burned during the fall to get everything done. So I just wanted to thank them publicly.
Great, thank you.
Well said.
I think it's also appropriate to share that we are going out for RFQ. John and I have discussed this. It's just good governance that every now and then you go out and it's been, Ted, what did we figure out? How many? It's been a while since we went out.
It's been 5 years. Our contract was 5 years.
And we're encouraging you, obviously, to respond to that.
And we
You know
fully
us very
intend to.
well.
Yes,
Okay,
you're an
good.
important client to us. So yes, we fully intend to respond.
Okay, great. Thank you. Anything else for John for the audit? All right, this is not an action item. So thank you, John, for your presentation.
Great, thank you.
Landon, I may ask you, since we've caught up with our published agenda, just to real quickly check to see if there's any comments from the public.
We have not received any additional raised hands or comments in today's chat.
Okay, great. I will close that item off of my agenda. Thank you very much. Lee, 200 hours and $25,000 in savings.
Good
That's
morning.
awesome.
Good
Thank
morning,
you.
Chair. Good morning.
Way to start.
Hey, and we're open to more. If that's, I mean, we're certainly open in the interest of more savings or not having to increase our audit fee to supplement with even more hours if they have the capacity. I'll just throw that out there.
That's awesome. Thank you.
So good morning, Chair Lanahan, committee members, board members. Again, my name is Lee Montanez, Director of Audit Services. I'm here to present two things. One is an update on internal audit, what we've done for the first quarter of fiscal year 23, and to present an update to the audit charter. First off, special projects and audits completed this first quarter of fiscal year 23. The first three on the list, pay for performance, Ernst & Young audit support, and the Energy Authority audit support. They're recurring activities. We've done the audit with John and his team for 2 years, and I appreciate the support and I appreciate the trust that you put in David Arnold, which has been the auditor assigned to the audit. And sure, we are looking forward to, if we can expand some of those hours, we may have the bandwidth for it.
That would be awesome.
We appreciate all that. The first three activities, again, recurring activities. For this first quarter, we issued 2 audit reports, one on fleet services, the other on project accounting. I just wanted to go briefly into each one of the reports. For fleet services, our scope was more on preventive and corrective maintenance activities, cost control, and fleet operations management oversight. We made several observations, some that I want to bring up. One has to do with preventive maintenance timeliness. So out of a sample of assets that we selected, we found that several hadn't been inspected, hadn't gone through the annual safety inspection. We made a recommendation that's being addressed. Another one had to do with the incident chargeback policy. So that's a policy where when there's an accident, it gets charged back to the correct cost center within JEA. We found some discrepancies in the figures, and that's also being addressed. One other observation had to do with the backup camera inspections. So we made a recommendation related to safety that when they do their safety checkup of vehicles, they check up backup cameras, because during fiscal year 22, we had 20 reportable incidents related to backup cameras. So those are the recommendations we made in the fleet audit. We also completed the project accounting audit, which we rated well managed, scope, capital asset tracking, their procedures, reconciliations, unitization process, and we found everything to be very well. We had some very minor issues related to their business continuity plan, documentation of business continuity plan, and the documentation of their succession planning.
Lee, it's not a part of your audit, but I've just got a comment. The equipment that I see around town with JEA's name on it is always clean. It appears to be treated in a very safe way. Whoever's in charge of running those operations is doing a great job.
We believe so too. When we did our audit, we rated it satisfactory, and we believe, other than those minor observations, that they were doing a good job.
Agreed.
So for action plans, this quarter we had 35 open action plans. This is just a number of action plans that we had, still open. Could be from 2020, 2021. We've closed 3 during this first quarter of fiscal year 23. What I have to say about the open action plans, they're all on track. Management's responding, and they're addressing these action plans. Any questions before I jump into the charter? Anything with audits and action plans? Perfect. So next up, internal audit charter. It's been a while since we presented update to the internal audit charter. We made some changes. First, I want to focus on that first box on the left-hand corner with some additional language that we added to the charter, and this is in compliance with the Institute of Internal Auditors Standard 1000, and the charter, the red line version of the charter is in your materials. And I just want to highlight some of the moderate changes we made to the charter, which had to do with updating the policy statement to better reflect guidance from the IIA. There was another change in the charter that was related to my responsibilities as the Director of Audit Services, where I need to come to the committee once a year to identify and say, hey, we're an independent function and that we abide by the Code of Ethics. And third, we expanded the authority, independence, and objectivity requirements of the internal audit staff, so they are truly independent of the audits they're working on. So those were the moderate changes to the report. There were very nominal changes, like committee name. We moved from Finance and Audit Committee to Governance and Audit Committee. We changed the title from the Chief Compliance Officer to Chief Administrative Office. And then we had some language revisions, again, in tune with IIA standards, where we added risk-based in front of internal audit planning. Any questions related to the changes proposed to the audit charter?
Jody, I picked up 2 little things that we needed to tweak. They're not synced here, but I assume they'll be synced for the board meeting.
Yes, we made those corrections like
They're little.
yesterday afternoon,
Okay.
so.
We made those corrections.
Okay, they're just little,
Very, yeah,
very minor, but important.
Right.
perfect.
Did everybody have a chance to look at the red line? Any questions? Any comments? Any motion to approve as represented?
Motion?
Second.
We will vote on this. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion will carry. Thank you very much.
Thank you again.
All right. Thank you, Lee. Thank you, John. Willette.
Morning.
Good morning.
Well, good morning. I am Willette Stanford, JEA's Ethics Officer and Director, and have the pleasure this morning of providing you an update on ethics. As you all know, integrity is a core value at JEA, and it's embedded within the company in how we operate and how we treat others when conducting our daily activities and decision-making. Building and maintaining trust in our community and pursuing the highest standards of ethical behavior are fundamental aspects of JEA's core values. As we continue to build a better culture and create action plans based on the results of our last employee engagement survey, I have been working very closely with our strategic team to improve on our integrity scores. This slide reflects the performance measures that we're targeting towards improving on those scores. In my next slide, it will focus on the additional resources that we're providing to our employees as a way to help engage them in integrity as it related to our scores. So the first bullet being more awareness on the tools to report. We have, as you know, 3 different ways that employees can report. So we provided some new branding materials and brochures. And I'm also in the process of creating some videos on how and when to report and how that process works. Providing value moments. As you saw this morning, Julie provided a value moment on integrity at our board meeting, but we will continually provide them at various town halls and additional public meetings as well. I did a town hall meeting in October and provided a value moment on integrity. Conducting more one-on-one ethical training in various business units. Instead of us just having a broad brush of everyone getting trained, I'm actually going to various business units now. I've been to the meter shop, customer service area, and water departments to talk about ethics and allow employees to have one-on-one opportunities to ask questions. Communicating more on issues and being more transparent. As issues come up in the workplace, we're putting those as training examples and providing those real situations to employees so they're made aware of what is taking place in the organization. And then lastly, streamlining our process for the hotline intake. At the start of this new fiscal year, we revised the ethics hotline process. This will allow us to trend the type of cases coming in related to ethics, both anonymously and identified, and hopefully a way to reduce our cycle time on closing cases. In the end, success at JEA will be achieved by being committed, courageous, and connected. Go Jag.
Go
Had to get
Jag.
mine in, Marty.
Go for it. I love it. Any questions for Willette or comments?
These, this action plan is very soft in my opinion. There are no specifics. It's more of this, better at this. I don't know how anybody could evaluate whether we'd accomplished what the action plan is. And that's not the way we ought to run things.
Jody and I have talked about this a lot, and we've decided that we want to, through this year, beef up how ethics coordinates with Lee and internal audit. There's some fuzzy gray area between the two. And then there's also the need, in my mind, to get a little deeper into what the issues of the organization are based on the survey results. So Jody, you want to?
If we can go
You're
back,
right.
can we go back one slide? So when we first put this presentation together, these performance measures, we had targeted goals from the scoring that we had from the employee engagement survey. And so there are measures that we're tracking that's behind the scenes. I mean, maybe we should have put it on the slide, but there are measurable benchmarks that we're targeting for these different things. And the action plan, these 3 performance measures are being tracked, how we're doing. And then the way that we're going to get here is by that action plan. So
Awesome.
we do have the stats behind it.
Great.
Why don't we share those details at the next committee
Okay.
report, committee meeting? And Willette has started doing the town halls, which I think are going to be very helpful. And Willette, can you just share kind of where that idea came from and how you're implementing that? Because I think that's going to be helpful to this end.
Sure, absolutely. Basically, I worked with Laura Dutton's team in strategy, and we looked at the actual numbers of percent based on the various business units. And then I reached out to the directors in those business units that were at least 10% under the company's average for the integrity scores. So there is that question that's asked around, are people at JEA behaving ethically? And that is what I looked at, and those are the areas that I've been reaching out to and visiting at their safety meetings and talking to employees one-on-one to get more specifics around why they felt the way they did and scored the way they did.
One thing on the second slide, it said, informing everyone on the tools to report unethical behavior. What are those tools?
We have actually 3 tools. In the past, the only way they could report through the hotline was via phone. Now we have a QR code that they can use on their phone just to scan, and it'll take them directly to the hotline platform, or they can use the email and send an email and report as well. So there's 3 ways you can report now versus just 1 way. So it's a matter of educating employees on understanding there's 3 different ways to report.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
No, we've got brochures, but the virtual setting, a lot of this information is on the website. Gotcha. and those different platforms. And again, we're remarketing and rebranding those different things, those tools that can be utilized. I've got some brochures I'll pass out at the board meeting to show you the ways.
When somebody calls the hotline, so is it anonymous, or can it be anonymous, or is it?
It can be anonymous, or they can say who they are.
You do get that option.
That's an option.
Yes.
And what did
we actually have a third-party vendor that provides that.
What did our employee survey? What was the general feedback from them about the integrity of the organization?
You want to jump in, Jody?
Yes.
Yeah, that'd be great. Laura's got all the data on the survey.
The key thing we saw in commentary from the survey was really around wait and see. There is a thought that everybody thinks Jay is really awesome. They believe our leadership team is positioned well, but they don't believe there has been enough time to see if they feel like this leadership team is truly going to be a difference in ethical behavior than what they have seen in the past. That was really the key theme.
And as I recall, it went on further to say, but the people in the middle haven't changed. So there's this trust in where the direction and the strategy, but there was a little bit of, I'm not seeing that in my department, which is why Willette is doubling down on the town halls. And I'll just share, Jody and I'm trying to think anybody else in the room we're at the Florida Women in Energy Conference over the last week. And we had 10 people at dinner, roughly. And it occurred to me, and we had a great dialogue, that none of them had talked about what they experienced during the previous issues that we had. And every single one of them said that was actually really cathartic to have that conversation. So I think the town halls should really help kind of say, well, yeah, you say we're ethical, but let's talk about what really happened. So maybe that's coming up, maybe it's not. My guess is, Willette, that every department has a little slightly different twist on how they interpreted that question. But a Gallup organization would tell you the number one way to change an opinion is have people talk about it. So I think that what she's doing is going to help us tremendously in that regard.
So a couple of things on that. What I think we learned in the handful of meetings that we've had so far, the first blush of this is we saw the lack of ethics at lots of levels, but leadership and the specific people over the time we don't talk about much. But when we start talking about ethics and we start digging down into it, the question isn't about the sale of JEA anymore. The question is, for example, the people thought that it was a problem whenever they were supposed to do something and then their supervisor didn't support what they said, or they were supposed to follow a policy and a supervisor ignored that policy. They switch the way. Those are the types of things we've got to find and then train and teach and get to the bottom of. I don't believe, and I think there's lots of methods, but I think the most important was not the three that we have that are, you can email, text, call. It is managers, leaders, supervisors are supposed to be talking to their employees every day. And if there is a concern, that there should be relationships in a way to be able to notify people of that. I don't think we have like rampant unethical behavior. We have employees who are not feeling like they have been supported in the way that they wanted to be supported. That's the effort that we have to get more out into. And that is my responsibility, the leadership team's responsibility, to teach, train, and allow the group of that next level of managers and leaders, and really even employees, hold each other accountable. So we will have stats and numbers. And right now we've done one employee survey. As we have more surveys, we can start to see some trends and some directions that will help kind of give us some background. But it's important to me that we are not playing to the test. We're not trying to fix the numbers. What we want to do is be able to use the results to then train in the right place and be in the right place. And I think we're making progress based on conversations, because it's not just one town hall. We each are going out and talking to groups. We've got these, I don't usually call them town halls, but that's an easy way to refer to them. We're out discussing and talking to all the different groups and different locations, online, in person, all the different methods and ways. So we'll keep on sharing this. It's an important, critical part. It is changing the second bullet of changing the values moment seems soft, except we were safe during all of the crazy period. What we lost was the other two pieces, and that's what messed us up, and we need to be better at that. So that's why we're doing that. It's not just public board meetings and town halls. It's all of our meetings. We're trying to start with, it's not just safety anymore. It's all the things. So, anyway, thank you.
If you recall, Chair Baker, when we first saw the ethics report from Willette at one of our first meetings, we were all kind of flabbergasted that third-party work environment was the number one complaint during that period of ethics. So I think that what Willette is doing is going to help us really put ethics throughout the organization. It's just going to take us some time, and we've had it. I don't intend to say we haven't had it. We've had it, but I think the conversation is going to help us even go further.
For those forums that you said, Marty, where you get good candid conversation, and I don't know, I think JEA used to a year ago or 2 years ago, but do you have a outside facilitator to then get with all levels of your organization, just a sense in, so people don't feel handcuffed, they're not afraid to, like if you're leading a town hall, well, they may feel a little bit hesitant, but somebody external to the organization that can capture, just what their some issues are that may not pop up in a town hall or in a hotline type mechanism?
My experience is people have not felt shy about speaking up even when I'm in the room, but I understand your point.
Yeah.
The survey that we use, I think, will help us do that. Don't think we need to have a blanket, send a third party out to do focus groups. But if we find an area that there is a concern, then we have some mechanisms, and through the group that we're working on now with organizational effectiveness and the HR team working with the training and what we're supposed to have in place, I think we can absolutely, if it's something that we need, we can do that.
And one of the departments had some issues in which Willette and Regina went out and spoke to that department on specifically on ethics and some things. And the manager of that department said it was very beneficial and helpful. So we do have some internal folks going into various departments, but we don't have an external resource. I don't know that it's necessary at this point, but again, once we start getting more employee engagement survey data, it may lend itself to that.
And it may be that the workforce committee determines that we should do a pulse check in the middle of, in between two surveys. Sometimes you can just do a short, these are the 10
got that.
questions. Are we doing that? Okay.
We'll do that. To the other piece of this is that this has always been tricky everywhere I've been, is that we've had some ethical issues that we have disciplined employees for up into termination. But that's a privacy. We don't then go put out a newsletter to say, guess what, we just did this. So finding way, the people that are around them know what is happening and what's going on. And so there's that. So we're going to continue to do that. So we have to respect the individual while we also deal with it. And we're dealing with that and working, quite frankly, working with the unions to set up better expectations of what is expected from those people that are represented and the managers that are leading the organization. This is not this is not something where we have it's got to be all sides of this. We've got to teach and train and get people better prepared.
Yeah. I'll say this though, I think the surveys where you constantly beat that theme, and I think it's good that every level except the senior leadership is actively reading these surveys, so that I think that gets more people at the lower levels. Hey, this isn't just an admin drill, that people are reading it, and your emphasis on, hey, it's more value added when everybody participates. That's good.
And the full engagement survey goes back out again February, sometime in February. Yeah. So so we will have, and this is significantly more broad than just an ethics piece of that, but it is all of the engagement issues that we're finding, and communication issues and training issues will be on the table, that we'll start to see some direction. Remember, the lowest score we got is people thought we were going to do nothing. And these are public meetings that we also let the employees know are happening, and your board meetings are public meetings. We help the board. And this is something. This is too soft. We need more information. We want to be sure that we're getting information out to our employees. You're directing us specifically to focus on that. I think sometimes we all miss the actions, and we're trying to be able to, we're sending detailed information out to our employees to say, here are the actions that we have taken to be able to improve that. And some of this is a slower chain, and it is not just about the ethics of the last 5 or 6 years, but some stagnation that we might have had over a number of years on how we approach things.
Culture.
Well, you've just been invited back as a subject matter expert on our agenda for our next meeting. So we look forward to having you join us there.
All right, will do. Thank you.
And yes, ma'am, go Jag. Go Jag.
That's right.
It is on mute. How's that work doing?
I love it. It's your wife. She has a secret bat way.
I'm telling you.
Our next agenda item is an action item, and I'm going to turn, after we discuss the slate of officers, turn the dialogue over to Laura, who's going to go over the board assessment survey and the CEO evaluation survey. But our action item is to address the slate of officers as we move into the coming year. And I'm going to open the conversation by making a recommendation that we just simply roll the slate of the existing officers forward another year.
I'll make a motion.
Okay. I was gonna explain why.
Had a whole speech prepared.
Primarily, is I think that we have seen the benefit of having a continuity in leadership. But John, you served 2 years. We're able to do that as a committee. I've checked with Regina and I've checked with Jody, and we're able to do that. So I think for continuity purposes, I think that's a great thing.
Absolutely.
So we have a motion.
Yeah. We had discussion.
Is there any further discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. Laura, the board self-assessment summary.
Thank you, Chair Lanahan, committee and board members. I'll give it just a second so we can catch up on our material.
Oh,
That's
sorry,
all
we're
we're-
right into it.
I guess while we're doing that, I'll give a Go Jags out. I've started watching it and trying not to annoy my husband as much with as many football questions, but NFL is different than college.
We went pretty fast on that last one. And so we may need to let the folks driving know that we're done with this discussion and we're moving to the next topic. Okay.
Oh, I thought we were driving in the room.
There we go.
It's hard,
back
it's
seat
hard
from-
when we don't say next slide.
Okay, got it. Jay knows how I feel about next slide. Next
Okay,
agenda
so
item.
FY
love
'22
that.
board self-assessment summary. In accordance with our board policy manual, we are in the final steps of completing the annual self-assessment. You'll see the timeline of the process on the screen. The full board completed the self-assessment between October 13th and November 15th, the results of which were made available in your material for review. And our purpose today is to review and discuss the results to complete the process for FY '22 in preparation for an update from this committee at the January 24th board meeting. So I'll give a quick overview of some of the key items that scored strongly agrees, meaning it got the highest score of a 5. 3 items there. First, the board has a strong working relationship with the CEO. They are regularly updated and addresses JEA's performance of key measures aligned to its strategy as outlined in the corporate scorecard. And then the last 5 rated item is that strong understanding and adherence to the Article 21 Charter bylaws, board policy manual, ethics code for the city of Jacksonville, and any applicable Florida statutes and city ordinances. So you all will have had the opportunity to review the comments there. There were 4 items that rated slightly lower, but still in the middle between agree and strongly agree. First is that there is an understanding and support of JEA's mission, vision, strategic focus areas, and that the board engages in strategic planning. That you all feel you have the knowledge needed to tackle important issues and are able to provide appropriate oversight for JEA. That you're well prepared for meetings and spend adequate time engaged in the discussion and providing direction to staff. And that you're focused on proactive, rather than reactive, and focused on the future versus the past or present. So before we move into the open-ended questions, I'll just note there were no items rated lower than that average of the agree and strongly agree out of the possible 5 points, an average of 4.71. 2 questions that were part of the self-assessment this year were open-ended items that really were to pull the thread on where the board feels like it's most effective and where there might be some opportunities for improvement. They were not given a rating, but I thought it would be worth making sure you all had the opportunity to discuss any of the comments that were made there. So Chair Lanahan, I'll turn it to you if there's any discussion.
Yeah, I want to thank everybody. These were very robust comments and they were very thoughtful, and I appreciate all of the board members' responses. There was an area that jumped out at me, and I think it's on the next page, whoever's driving, over the back stage. So I just said next slide or no, regarding attendance. And there were a lot of comments. Was it on the back?
It was on there.
What jumped out at me is that we really want to see each other face to face. And I think that's a problem because not a problem, but we can't really, outside of this mechanism, because we operate in the sunshine. I don't think any of us can have that conversation other within this boardroom. So I hope that the people that read this and the board, and we'll talk about it as well, notice that that is the one kind of comment that is pretty consistent and is an area from, that I would suggest that we can improve upon. Did anybody else notice that?
Absolutely.
Other than saying we noticed it, Jay, we can't coach each other on, well, where are you? Can you come face to face? So I think we just need to continue to make statements that we'd like to see everybody face to face, unless anybody has a better idea.
I guess the chairman can't call the member and say, get right or get gone.
I don't know the answer to that because we do operate in the sunshine. So I think
Sunshine, we also don't control who's on our board.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that to me is even a bigger, it's not like it's a board that you know, the chair decides who's on the board. It's a, obviously, people have, so it's outside our control.
I mean, during COVID, I get it.
Yeah.
Right.
But that's over.
I agree. And remind me, the governor says we still can have a quorum if some people call in, or where are we?
Doesn't count.
No, it's a physical,
A
right?
physical quorum after the expiration of his executive order, a physical quorum is required to conduct business.
But we can have that with the same ones of us that always are in person to the meetings.
Majority is a.
Majority is a quorum for this
And-
board.
Do WebEx participants or also do their votes count, you know?
As long as you have physical quorum, their votes will count.
Right.
You
Okay.
still have to have four.
Their votes, participation virtually, the board can determine what that participation looks like. For example, city council, you have to be physically present to cast your vote. You can't vote by proxy. There's actually a board rule, so you can govern what participation looks like. Now you have to have the physical quorum to conduct business, and you allow for virtual participation. But what that participation looks like is within your control as a board to set that as your rules.
So we can migrate to that.
You can.
I might recommend, if y'all are in agreement, that we discuss that further at the next board meeting based on the self-assessment. I mean, the next committee meeting, probably more appropriately, because this is a governance committee.
Come through the committee meeting, then go.
Have it come through the committee, and we can workshop that as appropriate. Yeah, no, I mean, I'll just be honest. I thought it was just me, and I was really happy
No.
that other people have been.
I think we need
Bothered
to,
by
I think what we can do is come back with some option and alternatives, because there are times whenever if we just do a blank, you can't do it, then it might cause some trouble. But I think we should have that discussion. You all should have that discussion, because it's your call on how that works, and we can bring back some alternatives and some ways to be able to have that. And it does seem like this is the right place to have that discussion rather than taking it to the full.
Right.
At your report on the next meeting, you can say, it's a topic we're going to discuss at our next.
Yeah, I think that satisfies me as an action item from the self-assessment.
I agree.
So we can address.
It is
that in a second.
I think it's a frustration. It is, we have been consistent with all the bylaws and all the rules and the way we're operating, just.
Oh, absolutely. And I appreciate the flexibility. I mean, I've called in from Maine before while I was on vacation, so thank you for that.
Yeah, well, everybody needs it.
Everybody
from time
needs
to
the
time, but
flexibility.
not all.
Time to time, right, yeah.
Yes.
But Regina, so the governor's executive order though, that's, we can't do business like we used to during COVID, right?
Right.
Correct, that is
Okay.
correct. Right, there were some adjustments to allow virtual meetings, which before was allowed by the state to
Mhm.
conduct virtual meetings, and how that participation looked. He lifted the restriction that's currently in the statute just for the period during the emergency, and the order expired, but the statute does allow for participation virtually in extraordinary circumstances. In your current rules and policies, you allow for certain situations. You can either expand what those situations look like, and again, you still need the physical requirement.
Even in a extenuating circumstance, even an emergency.
Even in an emergency, you need the
Okay.
physical quorum. And the governor does have the latitude, for example, there have been issues with hurricane activity, the emergencies where he can determine what local governments, agencies can do to allow for meetings.
We'll bring back some
Yeah, we'll just,
discussion points so that we can have a,
don't miss the next meeting. How about that? The next committee meeting, we'll do that.
you'll have to do that virtually.
And I guess also from city council, and I should know this, but, so do I get credit if I participate virtually and there's a physical quorum?
So the way it's been, and the board says that you have to be present at meetings.
Right.
Again, you can dictate, and so far in your rules it does. So participation, you have attended these meetings virtually. So you have attended the meetings. Again, it's within your purview to
Okay.
say what attendance and participation looks like for
Mhm.
your board meetings.
But so far, yes.
Currently, we
So
have.
far, yes.
And when we wrote our bylaws, we were in the middle of the COVID, so we said the virtual or physical thing, because it was just so, I mean, maybe one thing we'll relook too.
I agree.
I think it's important to be able to have the flexibility to John and y'all's points is that there are times whenever it is,
Oh, we all need that. I mean, that's-
it is the,
And when you did the update to your rules and policies, you did
Right.
allow for the flexibility for the extenuating circumstances. And again, you just spelled out what certain looks like, for example, illness, military service. You provided some examples of the extraordinary circumstances.
Yeah.
So that flexibility is built into your amended rules and policies.
Well, again, after the self-assessment, that was the one thing that jumped out at me. I was appreciative of everybody's, mindfulness around mission and vision and the importance of the IRP. And there's some great things that we all captured here. And I just want to say again, thank you for your comments. We'll do that at the next, cover that at the next committee meeting. All right, anything else on the board self-assessment? All right, well, Laura, can you walk us through where we are in the CEO evaluation process?
Thank you. I'm happy to do that. I think this will bring us home. This is also in accordance with our board policy manual. Similarly, we are in the final steps of completing the FY22 CEO evaluation. And really what we want to do today is just give you an update on the progress and what the next steps look like. So the same period of time you were completing self-assessment, you also completed an evaluation of the CEO. That wrapped up in November. The results of which have been made available to the board members. They've been reviewed and discussed with the board chair, who has subsequently reviewed and discussed those results with our CEO, Jay Stowe. The FY22 CEO evaluation process will be complete with the next step of an update noting completion from this committee at the January 24th board meeting. If there are any questions, I'm happy to answer those. And otherwise, that will conclude my presentation.
Yeah, our job as a committee is to make sure the process is followed and the evaluation is done and the comments are delivered. Obviously, the chair delivers the review to the CEO, and we'll get his words on that at the next board meeting. So our job has effectively been done.
One question.
Yes, sir.
For the CEO self-assessment, which I thought was very informative. Dumb question time. So Jay, you fill this out, is that correct? Or where does this come from? I don't know where this part comes from.
the CEO self-assessment that you all get that shows I have help filling that out and then talk about where we're targeting things, what the direction is, and then we review it before it goes out to you. But that's from me.
Yeah, I thought it was very helpful. Do we want to consider the board members have visibility of this before we do our assessment of Jay? You know what I'm saying? So when we did this part. Here.
Yeah.
So our CEO evaluation results. I'm just sort of thinking this was very helpful. I mean, a lot of, stuff I didn't realize Jay was doing, but I think it'd be helpful to have this information
Before we do
when
ours.
we do ours,
Doing
yeah.
it Not in a vacuum, but
It's a
maybe
pretty
not with
good
all the
idea.
information.
That's a
Yeah.
good idea. I'm trying to think how we've done it in other organizations. The other organization I've been on is we've set the goals and the CEO reported before we did the self-evaluation on where they were. So
Right.
the semantics of the naming of self-evaluation, I don't know that we need to see his self-evaluation.
I'd say, like I
but maybe
said,
a performance
Yeah, support
summary
form
of the
type
prior,
thing.
of the prior year.
Right,
It may,
because that's what I'm sort of used to.
it may have
I think,
already been that way.
The process.
You might have gotten it at the same time that you got your survey.
I think it was called something different
was
than
called
the
something different.
self-assessment.
Okay,
though.
that's-
What I'm saying is
okay.
you gave
Got it.
us, we had something that reviewed where we were for the year and based on Jay's commitment and performances and goals. And then we had that, we did the assessment, but the self-assessment, I guess we could see it at the same time.
Yeah, I just throw that out there. I've sort
I
of seen
think-
that done in the past.
Let's review, Laura, what we provided with the board, with the assessment, and then we'll circle back to that
Yeah.
at the next meeting as well, because it
Because
will be.
based on the timeline, you should have gotten it October 6th. But is that something different than what's
No,
in your
that-
packet? Did the CEO to complete self-evaluation to be included in the October governance board meeting?
I think we may have. I don't know if it was called the
Was
self-assessment.
it just the evaluation but not the completed form?
We'll be sure we get the right schedule and you get it ahead of time.
Yeah, it says you.
I
it
think,
says
I think
done.
I don't think we called it out as a self-assessment though, so I think that might be different. So we'll workshop.
can-
it.
That was good. It was pretty insightful for me at least.
I agree.
Yeah, we're on it. We're on it. Any other comments? A great recommendation, Joe. Thank you. Any other comments on the CEO evaluation? All right, hearing none. Is there any old business to come before the Governance, Audit, and Compliance Committee? Is there any new business?
I just want to comment on how excited or how pleased I was the way the whole organization came through the freezes that we had in December. We kept reading stories about Charlotte and Atlanta and all having, rolling blackouts and all that. And boy, we didn't hear a thing here. And I just wanted to say publicly that just congratulations and job well done, because that was not hearing anything was the greatest thing in the world.
There was lots going on, but
I'm
you
sure.
didn't hear anything.
Oh, I'm sure, but not.
It was.
I just wanted to comment on that because it was.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And in my CEO report coming up, I'll talk a little bit about that. Not as much about, thank you for that. What we've done, I think, is maybe more important. This is along the lines of what you remind us of all the time is, okay, well, that's great. What if it was 10 degrees colder? What if it was one step worse? And so we've got a team right now looking at that resiliency team that we've had in place is now looking at how do we prepare for the next thing?
Yeah.
Because
Is this going?
Memphis went under another boil water alert for their entire system because of the freezing. Now Memphis is way further north than us, and so one might think that we don't have to worry about that because we're in Florida. Except Memphis's backflow preventers are not above ground, and so we don't have to get that cold to have the problem. And so we're looking at all the different components, and we've got a team of people going through how can we be more ready and how can we develop plans to be more ready. And that is everything from, we tend to think of it as, oh, we got to get the operations folks ready, but it is every department, every group is involved in some level of how do we respond from customers to communications to being sure we have the right tools and equipment, things, and the list goes on. So we're working on that a lot. It's a lot of work. So that the next time, what we want to do is be able to let you compliment us the next time too.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, and it has been 10 degrees colder here.
It has been.
It's been in the teens before.
It's,
And
in
when
1985, it was 7 degrees.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
the target
That's the-
we've got to look for. Yeah.
That's what I
May
remember.
I offer one additional thought? One of the things I think would make you all proud is the way that the leaders across the organization are thinking beyond. So yeah, I mean, there are some pipes that we are actually going ahead and doing more insulation on. Jackie Shill, I'll call her out, made a great point that part of what made this tricky this time is people were already granted approved leave. People were already, holiday plans were already underway. And so even thinking beyond the operational, the pipes and the things, what are our processes telling us? So it was really encouraging to have those conversations with the group, and they're thinking much beyond just the degrees. They're thinking how we do this better for the people and for our customers that we serve.
Sort of to beat a dead horse off of Rick's comment, because one of the board observations were sometimes we got to watch getting caught up as the board into the day-to-day ops and stay more strategic. But I will say this, I mean, sometimes there are crises that require everybody. But Jay, you and the team have got a lot of these crisis things down, the good SOPs and battle drills where we need to know what's going on, but you've rehearsed it, you practice it, you worst case stuff. And that limits the necessity of it as a board to get down on day-to-day stuff and free us up for the more strategic stuff to help you all out. So great job on that. Just, keep that going.
Thank you.
That's good.
And as we get into emergency situations, we've got systems in place that you may not always hear from me or one of the leadership team, but we'll give you updates like we have done in the hurricane tropical storm type stuff. We will continue to do that to keep you in the loop. So for today, what I should have said is thank you, but I wanted to be sure you knew the background too.
No.
So thank you.
Yes, job well done, but.
Yeah. There was one omission in Jay's self-assessment is 15K time.
Oh.
We'll expect to see that in FY on year 23.
It's going to be slower.
All right, the next committee meeting is scheduled for August 4th of this year. And before we adjourn, you know what we have to do on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, go Jazz! We stand adjourned. Stand adjourned. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dodge.
That was crazy. Okay, I was at a
much fun.
wedding. The poor bride hates football. We were at Ponte and she lost 20 guests who went to the game.
Oh,
My
yeah.
son was in the wedding, so I was like, they projected it behind the DJ. You couldn't hear any sound, but we were all like dancing, staring at the projected game.
I forget what year it was a cover. It was some big party that they were having somewhere, and the Jags were in the playoff against the Steelers or the Patriots.